huge welcome. It's just great to have so many good people in one room. Welcome to UCM's 6th Annual Research Festival. It's really become a thing since myself and Stacey and a few others started it back in 2018. I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping before we officially ask the Deputy Chief Minister to open the event. In the unlikely event of a fire, please exit with the doors with the green signs over there. The muster point is the beautiful big copper birch out on the lawn. So we really hope there won't be a fire because the river's about to blow in. We don't want to be standing under the copper birch no matter how beautiful it is. Speaking of fire, the boiler at the nunnery is struggling a bit at the moment, so you'll notice we've got little heaters everywhere. So just be cautious of those because there's little heaters and cords. But also we've got that lovely big fire in the foyer. And if you're like me, there's nothing more satisfying than throwing a log on the fire. Please don't. We all do it, we're in trouble. But also it gets very hot around there. So someone else is looking after the fire. So please just be cautious around the lovely fire and the little heaters. The toilets you may have discovered are on the corridor. If you're leaving here, they're on your left. The ladies almost immediately on your left, and the lads just a little bit further down. We have got real live students studying in this building today, so be aware of that. Most of them are in classrooms on the lower ground floor, but you'll see them and that'll be lovely. But just be aware there's those sorts of real things going on as well as this unreal thing that we hope will be going on here. I'll come back in a moment, after we've opened the speech, to talk about the logistics for the day. But it's time to really get the game going, and so it's really, really great to have the Deputy Chief Minister, the Honourable Jane Paul Wilson, MHK, to officially open the 6th Annual UCM Research Festival.
Well, thank you, Gail, and good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here to officially open this 6th Annual Research Festival. Now, this year's themes are sustainability, well-being and AI and digital. And I'm sure you'll agree they are very much not only of the moment, but they are of real significance for our community and in the wider world. Our Island Plan emphasises the importance of outstanding lifelong learning and development opportunities for everyone. And the Research Festival is a real embodiment of this. The UCM Research Festival provides an opportunity for the sharing of research, typically on or about the Isle of Man, but also further afield. It aims to demonstrate the importance of research to improve understanding of matters that concern us all, with a focus on bridging the gap between academia and the wider community. The presenters are lecturers and students from UCM, established independent researchers based on Ireland, and we have guests from England, Denmark and Northern Ireland. The event showcases a diverse range of research and promotes a vibrant and productive research community through the sharing of resources, events and, crucially, networking opportunities. Today also sees the opportunity for some of UCM students to present their own research through presentations or posters as part of the Manx Graduate Research Project competition, and we are grateful to PDMS for sponsoring this. The Research Festival is now a well-established fixture in the annual calendar, and it's fantastic to see the high calibre of research being presented. I would like to take a moment to recognise the hard work of all of those involved and extend my thanks to all of you for organising what proves to be such a successful event year on year. A little bit about speakers today. This afternoon, Jason Bissell, who is a digital agency member and AI expert, will facilitate the great interactive debate, AI innovation for our sustainability and well-being. And I'm sure that will be absolutely fascinating, with a focus on what research is needed to realise the potential of our Isle of Man biosphere for our island's sustainability and well-being of all. And this year, we are also pleased to welcome Mr. Jens Bachem as our keynote speaker. Jens was a former CEO of a digital creative agency and a strategy consultant, and through his career has worked with some of the biggest brands in media and entertainment, such as Disney, Universal Studios and the BBC. Jens will share his insights on the story of place, why it matters, and how each of us can help shape a better future for the Isle of Man through our own research. Thank you, Jens, for your time today and for bringing forward a conversation which I'm sure will challenge our perceptions of the Isle of Man. As I say, welcome and thank you all for being here today, and I hope you have a really positive and enjoyable day.
Okay, so it all go wrong because I'm starting the laptop. We're in. I've broken it. I'll start again. That's you?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, thank you so much, Deputy Chief Minister. That was a fabulous start to the day, and we are now open and we're cracking. And Jens has been introduced to start the day, set the scene, and set the context.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Deputy Chief Minister. As the Chief Minister mentioned earlier, I hope to spend the next 20 minutes talking about why the nature of the stories we tell ourselves as communities can determine whether we flourish or fail, how we can start to craft a better story, and what we need to put in place to tell that story over time. As the Deputy Chief Minister alluded to, I spent the first 20 years of my professional life working for and with some of the biggest storytelling or commercial organisations out there, such as Disney and DreamWorks, Universal Studios and others, but spent the last nearly 10 years exploring the role that story can tell in helping communities flourish. Because as a species, ever since we've existed, we've told ourselves stories. Stories to make sense of the universe, the stars, the oceans, life and death. Stories to pass on information about what berries we can eat, how to hunt for specific animals, but also how to interact with strangers when they cross our paths in fairy tales. But particularly relevant to today, we've told ourselves stories of collaboration because we realized very early on that as a tribe we would be far more likely to survive the next saber-tooth attack, or as a town the next onslaught of the barbarians if we learned to collaborate, and that the level of cohesion would ultimately determine whether we would succeed or fail. Now, cohesion is a spectrum. On the one hand, you have seamless cooperation driven by shared values, and on the other hand, you have no cooperation whatsoever and essentially chaos. Now, we know of, unfortunately, many places that have failed where there is no shared narrative and you have anarchy and chaos, and some where there is friction, where basically you have competing narratives, competing stories, competing interests, and ultimately, at best, stagnation, at worst, division and civil war. Now, most places, most communities are either in the functional side, so they have a shared narrative and there is collaboration, but it's all very much reliant on the guardrails that are being put in place. And then there are those that are fragile, where the story doesn't really fully stack up. There is a kind of uneasy agreement, but there's continuously underlying questions. And it's a bit like a jazz ensemble, right? Where on the one hand, the musical instruments aren't even tuned, and you've got a complete another cacophony of noise, and on the other, you've got the band is tuned, they know exactly what they're playing, they know the music, they know each other, and they actually are able to improvise and get into the groove and create beautiful symphonic music because they have that shared endeavour. This is this idea of narrative alignment and speaks to the fact that story has the power to both bring us together but also to pull us apart. And if you look at the Isle of Man, and if you look at just the Triskelion, yes, it's the three legs of man, yes, it speaks to resilience, but ultimately those three legs join as one. And if you look at Timor, there's no fluke in the fact that it's a round mount, right? So, and if we're looking at nations and stories, you're looking at probably one of the most successful stories ever told is the Constitution of 1787 in the United States of America. And this idea of equal opportunity, the idea of the American dream, the idea of equal rights. And we can see right now how that story is being challenged, and we'll see over the next couple of weeks, months and years whether that story goes towards one of division and the enemy within, or more one towards collaboration and cohesion and coming together. Now the good news is, oops, sorry, the good news, I jumped ahead too fast. The good news is that as a group and as a community we can choose to craft a better story, and we start by asking better questions. And there is a really good framework for that, which is one that's called SOAR, standing for Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations and Results. And it asks questions of what are our greatest strengths, what are our assets, what are we really good at? What are the opportunities, what are the best things out there for us, and what can we do better? Aspirations, what is our collective intention, what is our desired future state, and how will we know in terms of results that we've gotten there? What does winning look like? How do we measure success? What do we need to achieve it? And I was speaking that, I think the Chief Minister earlier, I mentioned this analogy, it's a bit like, actually, sorry, Manx Radio, it's a bit like a sunflower, right? You're facing that which gives light, you're facing that which gives energy if you wish to grow. Because again, as a species, we are naturally drawn to stories of the possible, the positive, a better future. And that is why, and there's no fluke in the fact that the most successful movies, the most successful books have a happy ending, because we're naturally drawn to those. And this is a framework built on a model called appreciative inquiry, a different version of AI. And it speaks to cooperation based on the positive. And it was developed by a chap called David Cooper Ryder back in 1987 with his colleagues, and has been hugely successfully deployed in large organizations such as Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, but also other cities and communities from a grassroots perspective around the world. And in some ways you just got to look across the water to Ireland to look at what is possible when you do face the light. So, you know, Ireland in the 1960s and 70s was a very underdeveloped early nation being born out of lots of strife and civil war. But they realized that they had a huge opportunity, so they had a huge strength in the highly educated young. They spoke English. They had a diaspora of Irish that had been scattered around the world, in the US, in the UK, Australia, that had become very successful. And they had this mythology of the land of saints and scholars, of Shaw, of Yeats, of others. And they saw this opportunity at the same time where there was this massive growth in globalization, driven largely out of the US. They had the European Economic Area starting to take shape on their doorstep. They had the UK market on their doorstep. And they had an aspiration to build a better future for their young, so that they wouldn't have to emigrate like they used to have, like they did have to the US and the UK, and that they had a place where people could come back to if they so choose. And the results in many ways speak for themselves in terms of its economic and social success. But what is particularly interesting is how they've adapted over that time. Because the reality, you know, it's a 50, 60, 70-year journey that they went on. And you have, in many cases, as a small island nation, stuff happening on the outside that you can control, and some of it is self-inflicted. And speaking of the self-inflicted, you know, many of you may or may not know this idea of the Celtic Tiger, this massive boom that Ireland had, and kind of in some ways lost touch with reality. And that came to a crashing halt in 2008. And I remember I was visiting friends and family there, and was driving down a road near to where I lived, and I saw this kind of blue sign which had what I thought was WWW written on it, but it was actually WAW. I had no idea what it was about. And it was based on this realization that they had this amazing Atlantic coastline with little villages scattered around, and you had roads linking the little villages from south to north and north to south. And at the same time, you had this development of independent travel, with people getting a flight and booking a car and wanting to explore and see what's around. And there was a desire on the part of the government to move economic, or to have economic activity outside of the core centres of Dublin from an industry perspective, and Kerry from a tourism perspective. And there was a study done in 2022 about these road signs, and they were the Wild Atlantic Way. And that bunch of road signs now contributes €3 billion to the Irish economy every single year. So it's just this idea of facing the sun and adapting, but always kind of trying to face the light to drive growth. Now, cohesion and flourishing is more than just about crafting a better story, it's about the telling as well. And for any nation, the leaders that tell that story are obviously key, which is why it's great to have the Deputy Chief Minister here today. But it's not just about any one person. It is actually about the customs, concrete and community that tells that story over time. And by customs I mean the rituals and the drumbeat of storytelling. The concrete is, yes, the likes of Tynwald and the Triskelion, but it is also the other artifacts and the other physical components that manifest that story consistently. And lastly, it is about the community. And yes, it's about the Deputy Chief Minister, the Chief Minister and others, but it's about the wider community that tells and comes together to tell that coherent, better story day in, day out. Where was I? Yes, and it's a bit like getting fit, right? So if you're on a fitness regime, trying to move from where you are today to being a healthier version of yourself, it's knowing that in the morning you're going to go for a run, or on a Friday you're going to meet your mates and go to do your soccer, etc. So it's those customs, it's those rituals that help you move from where you are to where you want to be. It is knowing not just that you're going to go to the gym, it's the shoes that you're going to put on that will remind you of that regime or that fitness or that journey that you want to go on. And it is your mates, right? It is the friends that you're going to meet, or it's the fitness trainer that's going to kick you up the butt, or it is the race that you're preparing for. It's that kind of peer encouragement that ultimately helps you move from where you are to where you want to be. And this is this idea of storytelling architecture. The building blocks you need to put in place to tell that story over a period of time, because it's a bit like an endurance sport, right? You're trying to move from, as a nation, as a community, from where you are to where you want to be. And speaking about endurance, you just need to look at the great religions as stories that have passed the test of time, that have endured for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there you can see the customs, the call to prayer, the rituals. You can see, yes, the buildings, but also the rug, the Torah, the Bible, the devices that remind you of that narrative as a group that you want to tell over that period. And yes, there is the community. Yes, there is the leader or the deputy leader or others, but it's the wider community that come together, that believe in a narrative, that choose to believe in a narrative, and choose to propagate that narrative for their betterment over a period of time. And I was just in Ireland visiting family and friends, and we were driving down, actually it happened to be the 190 way, but it was just a side road, and we came down to this little bay called St. Brendan's Bay, named after Brendan the Voyager. And this was in 1512 AD. This chap felt that he was going to discover the Promised Land. This is 1512 AD, kind of way back in west of Ireland. And him and 14 other monks decided they were going to set sail on what was a small rickety boat covered in, I think probably goat and sheepskin, to discover this Promised Land. The story has it that they came across this land of fire and brimstone, which is now believed to have been Iceland with all its volcanic activity, but actually reached what they viewed to be the Promised Land, which some people believe to have been the Americas, which would have made him the first person to reach the Americas prior to Christopher Columbus. But they started their journey by 40 days of fasting, because I guess they were going on a long trip. And then that ritual of prayer, and then they got on their boat and they set off. And 7 years later, they came back from that trip to St. Brendan's Bay. So, bringing it back, I guess, to the Isle of Man, having lived here for 12 years and 12 years? 12 months. That would be a time war. And having spent a lot, 6 to 8 months of that time talking to lots of people, asking lots of questions, trying to get my head around the story of place, I think there's a huge opportunity to tell a better, more cohesive and compelling story for the island, and to move it from where it is today to a place of true flourishing. And that's why it's particularly exciting to be here today in a room full of people that are passionate about asking better questions, because that's where you start. As well as one of the key storytellers of the island in her role as Deputy Chief Minister. I would just urge the room to focus on the light and focus on the energy if you want to grow, and to start asking questions about what are we good at, what do we hope to be, and to look at the infrastructure that's in place and ask yourselves what story is that infrastructure telling. Is it the right infrastructure? Is it the infrastructure we want it to be telling? And to ultimately start crafting a better story, telling it over time, and getting to where the potential is that this island has. Thank you very much.